Broadcasting from the campus of Salisbury University, this is WSDL Ocean City, NPR News Talk 90.7, putting Delmarva first. It's time for Delmarva Today with your host, Don Rush.
Hi, Delmarva. There's a new trend in the poultry industry. It's a large chicken house operation. It has caught local residents and political leaders by surprise. Welcome to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush. From the eastern shore of Virginia to Delaware, the large chicken house operation has been popping up, and plans for more are in the works. They're known as CAFOs, or Concentrated Animal Feeding Operations. In Wacomico County, there are plans for a large operation in the Naylor Mill Road area. The South, Somerset County, as well as Accomack County in Virginia, have seen the expansion of these poultry operations, and there's been a backlash in these counties by local residents, leading county officials to draw up new regulations for the poultry industry. This morning, I want to talk with some of the people, the homeowners, that are affected by this new phenomenon of the industry. Here in Wacomico County, we have Red Green. He's with the Concerned Citizens Against Industrial CAFOs, created in response to the large chicken house operation planned for the Naylor Mill Road. Also from Somerset County, we have Tom Kirshner, who lives near a series of large chicken houses, and also by phone from Northampton, Virginia, Bob Myers, who's been involved with the issue and deals with wetlands and the bi-county water issues. And welcome to the program, everyone.
Thank you, Don.
So, Tom, I want to actually start with you first, because describe for me what it was like before a lot of these large chicken houses moved in. What was it like when you moved in? What was that all about? How long ago did you move in?
We moved from Parsonsburg down to Somerset County in 2006. We built a home down there. It's a rural area. It has been a rural area. I grew up in a rural area down in Worcester County. However, what's happening is things are changing. The form, the scale, the scope of agriculture is changing. And to me at least, understand this is a personal viewpoint. Money is great stuff. I'd love to have some. But money's not the only issue in this world. And economy of scale is an important part of making money. Also understand that. I've owned businesses. But somewhere along the line, there has to be a agreement between residents and industry. I don't care what industry it is. And here on the shore, what we have is poultry. It's the major poultry. When I lived on the farm down Berlin, the entire farm, and this was a working farm. This was crops and barns and, yes, some chicken houses, and a farmer and his wife that lived there on the land. It was not a out-of-area owner. But the entire farm, we did not have as many chickens as we do in one of these houses nowadays. And when you go to an area where there's residents and come in and say, well, I'm going to build 8 of these things right next to each other, there's going to be friction. Unless you can find, and personally I think, unless you can find some way to separate these things, we need buffer zones, we need changes on zoning to begin with. I don't have anything against farming. We have to eat. That's just a necessity of life. But I think that residents in any industry needs to find ways to work together. We have a new CAFO just down the street from us and holds a lot of chickens. It's in an area that now, having lived there for 10 years, I can look at, and this past week when we had a humongous amount of rain, the road flooded that I've never seen flooded before in those 10 years. And I've had some interaction with some other local residents, and they're all saying the same thing. Well, we never had this problem before. These things are all different issues that need to be worked out.
Does the the large operation, how does it affect your daily life? I mean, are there any kind of smells from it? Any kind of what kind of impact are you getting?
Of course, there are smells from it. I work in a hospital, and when this whole issue started raising really a big head and becoming public, I remember speaking to one of the doctors there, and I was asking about ammonia. And the doctor looked at me when I was trying to specify, I'm talking about what's coming from a chicken house. And the doctor just looked at me and said, ammonia is ammonia. It's toxic. And I say a lot, half jokingly, but in reality, if the emissions from these houses have no toxins, why do they spend so much time and effort getting it out of the chicken houses? I don't think it should be pointed at people's homes. I think that, buffers are great. I think there's more research that needs to be done on it. I'm not a scientist. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I don't know. But to me, a lot of it is like the issues they had with lead paint. We used lead paint in homes for many, many years because we didn't know. It's not until you have a basis and you've built up some statistics and some facts that you can say, okay, we're getting X number of birth defects out of these homes, that you can start really saying, we need to change this. But in the meantime, at least be a little bit careful about it.
What has been your experience in terms of relationship with the folks who own these large houses? I mean, what do they say to you? Do you talk to them at all? Or
I'm very careful not to let things get on a personal level. As far as I'm concerned, we need to be good neighbors. I don't believe in making threats or any of that kind of stuff. I just try to say, look, overall, as a community, I think we need to have a discussion. This was what I said to our own county commissioners right at the get-go. We need to revisit some of these things and take a fresh look at them because, again, we're working on a different scale. We're not talking 40,000 chickens on a farm. We're talking 250,000 chickens. That's a big increase. And we all have rights. Farmers have rights to raise chickens. But as homeowners, we also have some rights to a certain value of life.
I want to turn to Bob Myers. He's down in Northampton and has been food with not only the Northampton area but also the Accomack County area. And I understand, like for instance, there are a large number of chicken houses that are going up and down the peninsula. What has been your personal experience in terms of these chicken houses? How have they impacted the area?
Don, can you hear me all right?
I can hear you just fine.
Good. The effect from the chicken houses has been if you're downwind, the smell is absolutely obnoxious. We have one of our major real estate producers here, the Kirkwood Agency, has produced a 2-inch file of documentation of property devaluation located close to this industrial process. And I want you to recognize and your listeners to recognize that this is not traditional farming. It is always called traditional farming by the industry because they do not want it recognized that they are a 100% industrial process. This is an industrial operation, and it needs to be recognized as such. This is not your next-door neighborhood farmer growing 100 chickens on a 100 acres. And it's always presented as, you have to recognize that this industrial process has no more effect on you than old traditional farming. Well, that is a fallacy, and it needs to be recognized and addressed. And one of the ways to address it is through voting. And we had a problem in Northampton County where we had some of our supervisors supporting this in an area where we have a rather fragile water supply system and a very narrow mainland between the Atlantic and the Chesapeake Bay, so that the setbacks would be greatly reduced. And at the elections last fall, this was a primary issue. And our solution here was to vote these people out of office. And I hope that up in the Salisbury area, you recognize that. If you don't get the support from your elected representatives to do what is reasonable and proper based on science, you need to send them packing. Vote them out of office.
Bob, let me ask you this. So, in terms of the local reaction, what kind of new regulations are there in, say, for instance, Northampton, but also Accomack County? I mean, and are those sufficient in your own mind?
Well, what we did with our zoning, we changed the setbacks to a much larger distance than what we had. For instance, from a public right-of-way, we have 1,000 feet. From the limits of an incorporated town or the edge of the town, 1,500 feet. From any kind of village or hamlet, 1,500 feet. From any property line, this would be a neighbor now, 1,000 feet. And we did this based on the science that is very recent and totally different from the 2009 Georgia study that the industry is using to say that ammonia really isn't a problem. In fact, the ammonia is a problem, but a lot of the other particulate matter that comes out of the tunnel fans is documented to be hazardous to human health. That's why it's gotten rid of. And as your former individual said, this atmosphere wouldn't be removed from the chicken houses if it wasn't toxic.
Let me ask you this. Are there ways to build these chicken houses which you could filter that particulate out in particular?
Yes, Don, there is. There are ammonia scrubbers that are on the market, and they are water intensive in terms of their use. If you have an adequate supply of water, that doesn't seem to be a problem. But again, that runoff has to be handled at some point because the pollutants from the that are pulled out by the scrubbers have to be disposed of somehow. Also, the scrubbers are a high maintenance item, and this is one of the reasons I believe that the chicken industry doesn't want to deal with them. But they're available, they're on the market, they're used in other industries, and they can effectively remove ammonia from the atmosphere.
And as well as particulates?
Yes.
Let me ask you now, what is the difference between, say, Northampton and those regulations as opposed to what they're looking at or have looked at in Accomack County? Are they similar? What's the situation with that?
Northampton is, first of all, the geography of the two counties is different. As you proceed north from the Northampton County into Accomack, the land mass gets much wider. In Northampton County, if you look at just the main land mass, not the necks, the average width, the biggest width in the county starts at about 2.5 to 3 miles at the northern boundary. This is not including the necks now, and then goes down to 0 at the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel. So we have water almost everywhere, and 2,000 feet from our tidal waters will pretty much rule out a lot of potential placement for confined feeding operation.
And what about Accomack County?
The Accomack has a much bigger landmass. Now, they have already allowed very reduced setbacks from property lines. I have a very good friend up there who is several hundred feet from one of the confined animal operations, and he says when the wind is blowing toward his house, it's absolutely it's obnoxious. It's almost intolerable.
Have political leaders redone any of the regulations up down there?
This is being addressed, I think, on a continual basis in Accomack, and there are more and more people who are realizing with the new studies that are out, they have something that they can base their objections on science. And the National Academy of Sciences produced a document in December of last year that discussed the problems with the deposition of ammonia and ammonia gas and properties That was reflected also by a couple of other studies, one by the Journal of Environmental Protection, which, just by the way, happens to have Pilgrim's Pride, which is the second largest chicken producer in the world, as part of the group with the University of Arkansas. And there's another one from the Congressional Research Services that was produced in December 22nd of 2014, which addresses the same issue and recognizes that what's coming out of the houses definitely has an impact on the environment and on people's health. And based on the science, that is where you can go to justify sufficient setbacks from people and towns to prevent health problems developing as these chicken operations are erected.
I want to turn now to Rick Green, who is from the Naylor Mill Road area. There's a proposal for a large chicken house. Originally it was about 13 houses. I guess it's now scaled back to 10. I went out the other day to look at it. So, I mean, first of all, obviously, Rick, none of this can be good news for you. I mean, what was your own reaction when you first heard about the idea that there might be this large chicken house?
Well, Don, thank you for having us here this morning. Yes, we were very concerned about it, particularly when you view the number of subdivisions that encompass the property in question. We had an opportunity to tour those properties recently with you, and the homes in that area would represent several hundred, and ranging in, quite a variety of price ranges. Some are more of the medium-sized home in price range and up into the $250,000 to $300,000 range. Obviously, that would have a bearing on those values, as we have been informed by those who are in position to know in the real estate industry, and who have indicated that we can anticipate an 8 to 15% decrease in property value if this entity goes into place. This is, I would refer to this particular project as industrial agriculture. You mentioned originally it was 13 homes and reduced down to 10. It is on a relatively small piece of land, and in that many of us in that area have private wells. We are particularly concerned with the quality of the water deteriorating. We're also very concerned in that the Paleo Channel, which services the city of Salisbury, Delmar, all of these wells, actually quite a bit of this area of the county, is at risk in that it runs directly underneath this property.
So, what do you see as the political response to the county council? I mean, they've held a set of meetings, hearings. They brought state officials in. Some of the state officials say that you won't at least have, say, manure leaking out, that they think that'll be fine, and everything should be okay if all the standards are met. What's your impression of those meetings? What's your impression of the political response?
Well, first of all, let me say this process has been underway since 2015, the fall, winter of, and it's carried forward since that time, attending many meetings per month at council, etc. The powers that be in Wicomico County have given us and others a public voice from the perspective of addressing council at the public session. However, that's of concern in that we believe that we are seeing the Wicomico County Council, planning, etc., being significantly influenced by the industry itself. This is not farming. This is industrial agriculture that we're talking about here. Millions of birds on the particular location very close to us per annum. That, as was mentioned earlier, is not your typical local family operation. That has been a significant concern. We've already addressed the issue of air quality, so we won't spend time there, but we are concerned that the county officials are not responding appropriately to the residents, i.e., we're taxpayers as well, and we're seeing value of property declining significantly, and the county should recognize that the tax revenue is their means of completing various projects during any fiscal year here in the county.
Let me turn to the idea about setbacks, because in my discussions with you a few weeks ago, you were talking about maybe perhaps 1,000 feet setback at a minimum. I know I did talk to the president of the county council, who has been told, at least, and believes that that may be economically not viable for these kinds of operations. That's one of the things that he said. I'm assuming it's based on a lot of the industry folks. Is 1,000 feet an absolute must, or for this particular project, would you like it to simply go away? I mean, and I'm not sure that's possible, since this permitting process is moving forward.
Well, in answer to your question directly, we would like to see this particular project shelved permanently. And the reason for that has nothing to do with the setbacks in this particular issue, has everything to do with the Paleo Channel. The Paleo Channel, if I can provide a little bit of background, is it's an aquifer with pristine water. When you lose a natural benefit such as that, you cannot reclaim it. We have seen instances, precedents actually, in recent years where various projects in the area have been terminated simply because of the concern for the Paleo Channel.
Is that possible in this particular case? Is there any way the county can say, well, we know there's been permits made and so on, but you can't build here? I mean, is that really, or is the horse left the barn, as it were?
Well, let me correct. First of all, permits have not been issued.
Okay. Yeah.
The land has been purchased. We know
Right.
that. The no activity is going on that I'm aware of at the present time. Therefore, there's always the option for discussion. We know that there were other individuals in the area who are family farms and who would be interested in acquiring that property for the purpose of growing crops, i.e. vegetables, etc., which has been done on that property in the past. Your second part of your question regarding county council and these setbacks. Initially, we have been endeavoring to, as I would suggest, be above board in everything in our discussions and keep it on a very professional level, but it has been frustrating, especially when we've seen members of the poultry industry coming to the table and providing advice to council relative to these matters and other councils in neighboring counties. The initial request that was put forward was for setbacks of 100 feet from the property line, not thousands, 100. That came from the industry. Also, 400-foot setbacks from any residential dwelling. And there was also a request for 500-foot setbacks from exhaust fans. Those are the requests that came forward from the DPI. What is proposed at this time by the Wacomico Council, and Commission, I should say, to the Council, is almost directly in line with everything that DPI has requested. And we found that very interesting, in that when we have talked with them at an open forum and provided very reasonable suggestions, it has been given lip service at best, but in truth, we see it as a willful ignorance of the Wicomico County Council when it comes to very real public health issues and listening to people. The key words I said there are a willful ignorance, purposefully being done. Lip service. Listen, but do not receive.
Want to turn to Tom Kirshner here, because what is the situation with setbacks in Somerset County? I
Well,
mean, there's some debate to go in, and you guys are trying to figure it out. I know there's a proposal for 1,000 feet, but that might be a little squishy there. I don't know.
yeah. Right at the moment, I mean, there's a lot of stuff up for discussion. But the realities are down there, just like they are in every other county around here. Look what we're fighting. And we're the residents that come in. And I always love the response I get on social media. Go back to the city where you're from. Parsonsburg, it's a big city. Berlin, whatever. But we hear this stuff all the time. You can study things to death. You can propose things forever. But somewhere along the line, somebody's got to bite the bullet and say, okay, we've got an issue. Let's come up with something realistic. And you're not going to get that from DPI. I tell you what, I love the thing they put out last year about how it was a set of proposals put out by DPI about how to be a good neighbor. And I love the one right at the end was, because you have the equipment, when there's a storm or it snows, offer to plow your neighbor's driveway. Well, hey, don't worry about those 10 mega chicken houses you've put up next to me. You've plowed my driveway. And when you're talking to even a 300, 400, 500-foot setback from those fans, if you're the person that's living behind those suckers, you're going to wish it was a mile setback. This past weekend, and here on the shore, you live here, breeze comes from the south. Might be great if there's nothing behind you. We had a breeze that came out of the west a little bit. There's chicken houses, as a crow flies, probably 3/4 of a mile away from us. You're reeked. And I unfortunately don't think that setbacks are the entire answer to everything, but at least propose, and I'm not talking about the people that live around CFOs, I'm talking about the counties. At least propose something realistic. 250 foot ain't nothing.
But to turn finally back to Bob Myers, because a lot of the situation, it seems to me, is particularly in the Naylor Mill case, and I suspect in perhaps other cases in Somerset County, that this is really an issue of location, that we wouldn't really be talking about the issue of setbacks and so on if some of these were not located near developments. And I'm assuming that, and I know a lot of people have moved into developments, and they were there for a long period of time, and then the chicken houses sort of pop up, as it were, because it's an agricultural area. Is this just an issue of location? Does something need to be rezoned or something put in a zoning so that even in an agricultural area, if you got a cluster development, they get other issues come into play?
Don, I've been biting my tongue here because I wanted to make a couple of comments.
Sure, go ahead.
I don't want to interrupt anybody. Yes, if you take the industrial process, and please don't call it industrial agriculture. It's an industrial process, period, plain and simple. If you take this industrial process and put it on the moon, it doesn't affect anybody. If you put it in the middle of I'm going to call it a 20 square mile piece of land with no runoff and no problem with any of the byproducts infecting the neighbors, you have no problem. And what it boils down to, I think, is setbacks. And what this county has done is to say in the lead into the zoning setbacks, we had debated these over and over and over again. And the board started out by saying the board further finds that one or more substantial impacts on the public health, safety, or welfare have been identified when these standards are set by this section. And it says, in addition, the board finds that the thresholds and standards established herein are the minimum necessary in order to satisfy the relevant policies, goals, and objectives of the comprehensive plan without allowing the activities and structures permitted by this section to cause substantial impacts and thereby endanger the public health, safety, or welfare. Now, that last phrase is key, because our state government charges all the local governments to protect the health, safety, and welfare of all the citizens. And with that in mind, the local government has an obligation to do that. And if they don't, the only solution is to get them out of office. If the Salisbury Council or its leader are not going to consider the public health, safety, and welfare, you need to replace them.
Okay, Bob, I'm going to cut you off there because we got to wrap it up. We've been talking with Bob Myers, who's been involved with the issue down in Northampton, Virginia. Also, Tom Kirshner from Somerset County, Rick Green from the Concerned Citizens Against Industrial PFOS here in Wicomico County. And we're, of course, in touch with the agriculture community, and we'll have some of the farmers and some of those folks on as well. This has been Delmarva Today. I'm Don Rush. Thanks for listening.
This has been Delmarva Today, a production of Delmarva Public Radio. Chris Rank produces and is our audio engineer. Don Rush is your host. For podcasts, visit our website, delmarvapublicradio.net, or subscribe to the Delmarva Today podcast on iTunes. Delmarva Today can now be seen on PAC 14. To view the schedule, view the daily times, or visit pac14.org.